Hey guys, Robbie here from CrossFit South Bend. Today we're going to talk about the ketogenic diet. So, keto or the ketogenic diet, you have probably heard of if you've ever heard of bulletproof coffee. That's kind of in the same mold. It's something that's become a lot more in vogue these days, and people are curious about what it is and who it can be beneficial for. So today we're going to answer those questions. So we're going to talk about what is the ketogenic diet, who can it be beneficial for, and then should you do it? Is it something that you should do, or are there certain cases where you might want to hold off? So first of all, what is the ketogenic diet? So in a lot of ways, the ketogenic diet is a gigantic middle finger, if you will, to the high carb, low fat dietary orthodoxy that has prevailed for the past 40 to 50 years. Now, it wasn't designed that way, of course, but it's basically the exact opposite. If the prevailing orthodoxy of dietary advice for the food pyramid and things like that was super high carb and super low fat, keto is the exact opposite. It's super low carb and super high fat. In particular, Orthodox keto, there are lots of different variations, but Orthodox keto follows the macronutrient ratios in the following way. Protein is about 20%, carbs are about 5%, that's a really small amount, and then fat is about 75%. So the goal is to keep carbs very, very, very low, to keep healthy fats very, very, very high, and keep protein to a very minimal level to ward off what's called gluconeogenesis, basically where your body makes glucose from the protein that you eat. So we're trying to reduce chronic blood sugar spikes that come from excess carbohydrate consumption, and to a certain extent, sometimes elevated glucose and insulin that can come from excess protein consumption. So that's what the ketogenic diet is. It's a very high fat, very low carb, moderate protein diet. So who's it beneficial for? Well, it can be beneficial in a lot of different circumstances. Number one, above all else, things like mental health conditions. Epilepsy is a very, very famous example where nothing else works for a lot of people, and epileptics who go on a ketogenic diet see tremendous benefit. Neurological conditions more generally, so not just epilepsy, but things like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis have all been shown to be greatly benefited by a ketogenic diet. Another area that it can be very helpful in is if someone is, let's say, morbidly obese and severely insulin resistant. One of the best ways to reverse that, say in a case of type 2 diabetes, is to go on a ketogenic diet. And one of the main ways this is supposed to work is, again, with the ratios of macronutrients that you have. Fat does not spike blood glucose and therefore does not spike insulin. Carbs are the most insulin spiking and blood sugar spiking macronutrient, of course. And then protein is kind of in the middle there. So that's why it's super high fat, super low carb, and then moderate protein. So it's something that can be very, very beneficial in those types of conditions. And there are other conditions as well, but those are the most famous. Now, aside from health conditions, in the endurance world, just for performance, people have been turning to a ketogenic diet recently because when you do endurance events like long cycles or marathons or things like that, you're primarily tapping into your body's fat stores if you're fueling yourself correctly, rather than lots of carbs and goos and all these other things that endurance athletes typically consume. And when you're fueling yourself with fat rather than carbs, you tend not to bonk out the same way people who, have lots of breads and pastas and goos before races tend to. Now, should you do the ketogenic diet? This is a very important question. So the answer is, of course, it depends. It depends on your context. Always consult with a practitioner. Make sure, you're talking with your doctor about these things. But that being said, if you're someone with a neurological condition or someone who's severely insulin resistant, it could be something to try. On the other hand, the ketogenic diet isn't for everyone, and it can have its problems. Because it's super low in carbohydrates, it's also very low in fermentable fiber, which is necessary for your gut bacteria to produce more beneficial bacteria and to grow and to thrive. So cutting carbs that low can be problematic from a beneficial bacteria perspective. If someone is chronically stressed, or they have hormonal issues, say thyroid issues or sex hormone imbalances like estrogen and progesterone, or if they're trying to get pregnant, for example, ketogenic diet may not be the best choice. Again, depends on the context. There can be exceptions, but in general, it may not be the best thing. And then lastly, one thing you have to always judge with the ketogenic diet, and with any diet really, paleo, vegan, what have you, is to what extent can you live your life? One of the things that's pretty hard about keto is that you're basically cutting out the vast majority of vegetables. Like, you have to be eating a very small quantity of vegetables aside from leafy greens, to stay keto. So that's a relevant consideration as well. But that being said, it can be tremendously therapeutic for people with mental health conditions, for endurance athletes, and for people with insulin resistance. All right, guys, so I hope you have a better sense of what the ketogenic diet is, who it can be beneficial for, and whether you should do it or not. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.